welcome to Season 11, Episode 14 of the Ubuntu podcast. In this episode, we're going to review the KDE Slimbook II. We'll also have some command line love, and we'll go over your feedback. I'm Mark, and joining me this week are Alan.
Buongiorno.
And Martin.
Hello.
Martin, what have you been up to of recent?
Well, as is my wont, I've been getting my Elite Gamer gig on again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's never ending, this.
I know. It's my new persona.
It's the gift that keeps on giving.
It really is. It's my new persona. I'm all about the games now. I'm all about the games. So, and also I've been experimenting with the Hades Canyon NUC, which has finally arrived.
I see. So have you been plugging your big external graphics card enclosure into it?
Yes, to miserable failure as it happens.
So we had someone asked a question a previous week about how well it was going to work given the combined AMD Intel chip and drivers and stuff. So do I take it from your miserable failure that it's not working so well?
This is a tale of two halves. So there's the internal...
We've only got half an hour, mate.
Okay. Give me 32 minutes and I can explain it all. There's the internal RX Vega M GPU, which is not going to be supported until Linux kernel 4.18. So I've done everything on that box apart from compile the out-of-tree patches for that GPU, which I will do over the next week or so, but I have done all of the other bits. But then I've also plugged in my eGPU with an AMD RX Vega 56 and have now found that my monitor is so old and decrepit that new fancy GPU can't negotiate the EDIDs on the monitor, so I can't actually display
Sorry, what's an
anything.
EDID?
Oh, it's the way that you tell that graphics devices negotiate with monitors to determine resolution and refresh rates and things like that.
So you don't have to edit your xorg.conf like some kind of brutal animal.
Yeah. So I'm faced with two options. One, edit my xorg.conf like an animal, or buy a new monitor. So naturally, I'm going to get a new monitor. Hence my interest in LG's new offering last week.
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, aside from that, that's a work in progress. You're
a bit of an early adopter here, really, aren't you?
Totally. Yeah.
So this thing's going to sit on a shelf, much like, I don't know.
Oh, no. It's not sat on a shelf. It's on the desk behind me. Everything else works. It's chocked to the rafters with Samsung 960 Pro SSDs.
Sorry. When you say everything else works, can you get anything on the display?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I can get things out on the display.
But just not GPU accelerated.
I just can't do 3D acceleration at the moment.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's a perfectly functioning workstation unless I want to play games. You know, if I want to play M-Snake, no problem.
For your elite gaming tastes.
Yeah. And my elite gaming tastes these days have switched to... So there's a game came out on Windows about 10 years ago, because I'm elite, see, so it's like 10-year-old games are my thing.
Hey, you're encroaching on my patch now.
Yeah, I totally am. But no, yours are like 20 years. I'm just going back a decade. True. So there was a game called Track Mania Nations Forever.
Yeah. Is it a driving game?
It's a driving game, Mark. Yes,
it's a really good driving game.
Yeah, it's really good fun, and I've been playing that under wine and having a real hoot with that. And I've gone through about half the solo play levels and now started to develop online ranking, playing on the online servers against randoms on the internet. So it's pretty good fun. There's a player ranking of about 12 million, and I'm up into like 3 million and something. So I'm approaching the upper echelons of competency in that game. It's brilliant.
Wow.
Awesome. Right. I think we better get on with the show. Right, well, Alan's got a new laptop, and it's not a ThinkBook this time.
ThinkPad, I think you'll find. No, it's
ThinkBook,
not.
ThinkPad, whatever. It's a book of some sort. Anyway, what is it, Alan?
It is a KDE Slimbook II. The very kind people over at Slimbook in Spain, so slimbook.es, sent us one of these for review, and they sent it to me a little while ago. I've had it for about 2 months now, and I've been using it quite a bit, and here am my review. So first of all, let's get the hardware specs out of the way. It's laptop which looks like an Ultrabook style, so thin and metal. It's the one I've got is silver, like aluminium, looks like a MacBook Air, but they also do them in black, I was told, in secret.
I have seen the black ones at UbuCon a couple of weeks ago, and they are rather gorgeous.
I imagine they look quite nice.
They do.
You know my penchants for black laptops.
Yeah, it would suit you down to the ground.
Yes. So, hardware specs. This is the one I've got is a Core i5 7200 at 2.5 gigahertz, 4 cores. They also do an i7. It's got an integrated Intel 620 GPU, 16 gig RAM, 500 gig Samsung 960 EVO SSD, NVMe, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, 1080p matte screen, full-size SD card slot, headphone socket, built-in mic, speakers underneath the keyboard, 720p webcam, perfectly usable, a bunch of USB ports. It's got one USB 3, one other USB 3, which is a Type-C connector, and a USB 2 Type-A connector. None of them are Thunderbolt capable. My one happens to come with a Spanish keyboard layout, but you can order them with other keyboard layouts, but that does add a little delay to the order. So just be aware of that. They're a Spanish company, so mostly tailored for the Spanish market. It's got an illuminated keyboard, and the little LED lights that tell you whether it's plugged in and the battery is charging and whether you're on Wi-Fi are immediately above the keyboard. It's got a Synaptics touchpad, 46 watt-hour battery, and I think that's everything that you need to know about the hardware itself.
So regarding the keyboard, what is on the super key?
There's a little picture of Tux the penguin and the word Slimbook underneath it.
So
and is that printed on?
Then
I don't want to try, but I don't think that's a sticker. I think that's etched in some way.
Excellent. That's quite cool.
Yeah, it's quite cute. So it came with, software-wise, it comes with KDE Neon, which, as you know, I'm a bit of a fan. So it was quite nice to get this. And I've had no problems with the software whatsoever. I know KDE Neon. I've got it on my ThinkPad, so there's not an awful lot to report there. I did have one quirk, but I think that might be operator error. Sometimes the wireless would switch off, and I don't know if that's me fat fingering the wireless function key or something, but sometimes the wireless would just be turned off, and I just hit the notification thing in the bottom right, click the make it work again button, the tick box. It just enables it and it works again. I should also say, mine came with a dongle, a USB-C plug on one end and a little 2-inch long dongle that has 3 USB ports along the side and an Ethernet port, a gigabit Ethernet port on the end.
Okay.
So that dongle just works. You just plug it in and you've got Ethernet and you've got 3 extra USB ports, USB 3 ports, which is very handy.
Yeah, nice.
But that doesn't ship with the default package. That's an added extra that they happen to put into the one they sent me.
Now, is it an option? Sorry, Martin.
It is. It's an option.
It is an option that you can get. Okay, yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Now, some of the laptops that we've reviewed from various vendors, we've had a bit of a shabby out-of-box experience. How was the initial boot and setup and all the rest of it?
Exactly as you would expect. You turn it on, you get a Slimbook logo. I think it says something like "Discover Freedom" on the boot screen, and it's just like their logo and F2 for boot and F10 for choose a boot device. And if you leave it alone, it just boots into KDE, right? And it just works.
And you get some sort of OEM setup.
Yeah, I went through the first run thing, create a user, all that nonsense. It was as you would expect a laptop to be. Nothing quirky, nothing unusual. Everything just worked as you'd expect.
Cool. So, have you had any issues with hardware support, or all the Wi-Fi and screens and external displays? Does that all work as you'd expect?
I haven't.
Keyboard keys and so on.
Yeah, everything's. I mean, it's been a bit quirky with Spanish keyboard, but I've just set it on an English keyboard layout.
Yes,
and just not looked at the keys because there's loads of crazy characters on there that I don't understand. But in terms of support for the hardware, it's all good. Yeah, and in terms of hardware support, I actually tried booting an Ubuntu 18.04 USB stick on it, and everything worked.
Excellent.
I also for the lols and basically for Joe Ressington, put a Triskel CD on a USB stick, and everything worked in Triskel except wireless. So I couldn't get wireless working, but the dongle did work. The USB-C dongle did work.
Yeah. Does it have Bluetooth as well?
I think so. Yes.
Right.
It's got a Bluetooth icon, but I've not actually tested it
because I've not tried it. Okay.
No, I haven't.
Interesting.
Now, something that I know our listeners are always interested in is, what is the battery endurance like? How much noise do the fans make, and how warm does the laptop get?
So, I tried a few tests on this. In normal, if I leave it with the brightness at 30%, doing nothing, with power management switched off, just to see how long it would last doing nothing. So no applications open, not even on the Wi-Fi, just doing nothing. It lasts 8 hours, 40 minutes. And that's with 30%. So you could dial the brightness down. That's still perfectly viewable. If you dial it down 2 more notches, you could still use it. So you could get a bit more than that, but that's obviously doing nothing, like no applications open, doing nothing. But the flip side of that is with power management switched off. So it's not even, aggressively trying to suspend or anything like that. So I think that's a fairly good measure of like the maximum you're likely to get from this thing. Mm-hmm. I also tried leaving a video playing. So I fully charged the battery and then went to YouTube and full screened a video. Actually, it was the 3D printer video I was talking about last week that I knew would last for a long time because it's 4.5 hours long. So that actually does run for a good 5 hours with the full screen at 1080p video with Wi-Fi on, but the power management was suppressed by the browser because it was playing full screen video. So that gives you a good idea of how long you can sit and watch a video for on this laptop. It's a good solid 5 hours.
Wow. That's impressive, I have to say.
Yeah. And it takes, the downside is it takes about 4 hours to charge when it's on. Yeah. It's faster if it's off or suspended, but while it's on and you're using it, I mean, if you're sat at a desk, while you're working during the day, then it's going to charge during the day and you'll be okay for the journey home. But it does take about 4 hours. The power brick is fairly small. It's quite petite. It's got a fairly decent length cable. It's about 1.5 meters from the charger to the laptop and about 2 meters from the charger to the floor. I didn't see what wattage it was. But it's a 19 volt, 2 amp, something like that. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I didn't have a problem with the power on it. I didn't find myself lunging for the charger very often or anything. So, yeah, and I know I don't lunge for anything very often. Maybe a pie.
I wasn't going to be the one to say it.
Okay.
So aside from the crazy Spanish letters on the keyboard,
you did ask about the fan. Mm-hmm. I have not noticed the fan noise at all. Even when playing games and doing like 3D stuff, I didn't notice it. I couldn't hear it at all. Okay. It's very quiet.
I was going to ask about the keyboard, but you've mentioned games. Mm-hmm. So come on then, get your games out. Is this suitable for elite gamers such as myself?
So I don't think Thunderbolt stuff is enabled, so you wouldn't be able to use an external GPU, I believe.
Oh, right, okay.
Unless I'm mistaken, I don't believe you could do that. But the 3 games that I always test, Mini Metro, 50 frames a second. It's a fairly lightweight casual game, 50 FPS. Goat Simulator at 720p, 25 frames a second. Talos Principle at 1080p. With most of the detail like on and quite busy, was 25 frames a second as well. Okay. So yes, you can play games on it. Yes, if you dial down the settings, you'll get decent frame rate. No, it's not for, the most hardcore elite gamers that Martin aspires to be. And speaking of keyboard, you asked about the keyboard.
Yeah.
It's actually a really nice keyboard. I didn't have a problem with it. It's fairly low travel. It doesn't make much noise. It's not clacky in any way. It's pretty quiet. It feels fairly soft touch. You might like the keyboard layout because the cursor keys in the bottom right-hand corner have that layout where your left and right fingers for the left and right keys and then a middle finger in between for up and down. And the up and down keys are half height. So they fit in between the left and right. And the keys also double up as page up, page down, home end.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's my
so what if you hold the
preference.
function key?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So you can navigate without having to move your hand around too much.
Okay.
That's
quite
what
nice.
I like. That's purely subjective from my point of view.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And how about the trackpad?
I'm not a massive fan of trackpads, as you know, but I had no problem with this at all. It didn't fire while I was typing. I didn't find it's fairly nice feeling. It feels kind of metalish, like rough, like brushed aluminium kind of thing. But it's a decent size. It doesn't feel too small. It doesn't feel like ridiculously huge, like some laptops have, like the new MacBooks have. It's good.
Okay. Now, we have some sort of questions from the listeners that crop up in these reviews. So will it pass the Stuart Langridge beauty test?
So it's not a ThinkPad. It's not like, communist, horrible industrial design. So, that it will tick that box for Stuart. It really looks very much like a MacBook Air or a MacBook Pro or something Apple-y. It's like silver aluminium finish. It's a very smart looking laptop. It doesn't look or feel cheap and nasty. It feels nice in the hand. It feels nice when I'm carrying it around. It doesn't feel flexible. It looks nice. It's not like high end HP gold plated laptop, but then it's built to a price. So it's a nice laptop. I like it.
And speaking of price,
What? Crikey, yes.
Yes. What is the retail price of the model that you've got? Do you know that?
Yes, the one I have, I spec'd it up on their website, and today's price, as I spec'd it up, is €1,098. Now that's not that, and that's £956 or $1,267 US. Now that's not the base model. You could get it cheaper than that if you didn't have the dongle, if you don't need the wired dongle, for example, and you didn't want as much RAM as this has, or if you wanted a smaller SSD, the default SSD, all of those things, dial those back, and it comes down a fair chunk. But that's what this one is. And they provide 2 years warranty in Europe. I didn't investigate how that would work and what would happen because nothing went wrong.
That's good. And do you think, would you pay that for it?
For this kind of spec, yeah, I think that's a reasonable price for like $1,000 for a 16 gigabyte laptop that's got an i5 with a decent SSD in it, a fast SSD and capacity for another drive.
It's got capacity for a second drive as well.
Yeah, you can opt to have a second drive fitted as well.
And is that like a sort of a 2.5 inch sort of spinning size drive, or is that another SSD?
Yeah, it's well, it could be SSD or spinning rust.
No, sorry, but I mean, like,
I think
it's not. Is it a sort of MSATA kind of?
I think you could fit a normal size hard drive in there.
Okay.
Somewhere. I don't know how because it's pretty thin and light, but the website shows you can have 2 drives.
Okay, that's interesting. Cool. Well,
anything else?
Let's have a look.
So, Joe always asks whether the power connector is straight or right angled.
Yeah.
The answer is right angled.
I always ask if it hibernates, and you always say you close the laptop like a normal person. But did you try hibernating anyway?
I don't know what you mean by hibernate.
As in,
you mean
it powers off completely, but then it resumes what you were doing when you turn it on without having to go through a full boot sequence.
You mean suspend then?
No, I don't mean suspend. I mean hibernate, because suspend still draws power.
Right. But nobody does hibernate these days. Every distro has it turned off
by default in Ubuntu.
So even if it did, I'd have to jump through hoops to enable that because no distro has that enabled.
So the answer is, as usual, you haven't tried it.
Well, the answer is, I think you mean suspend because nobody does hibernate. So, and I know people like, other distro, Windows does it and Macs do this, but on Linux, that's not really a viable option right now. So I shut the lid, it goes to sleep, I open it up, it wakes up. The one quirk with this is the little light that tells you whether it's awake or asleep is inside the laptop. So when you shut the lid, like it's like the fridge door, right? You don't know the light's on until you
So you have to open it and take it out of suspend to see if it's in suspend.
Yeah,
right. Is that
so
also where
the cat's dead or alive?
Exactly.
Is that also where it tells you whether it's charging or not?
Yes.
That's a bit of a pain.
So
yeah, that's a bit of a design flaw, and you can kind of see it if you peek through the gap. But it's not ideal. But there you go. One thing. Sorry.
Go on. Sorry.
One thing that's worth noting is these guys are a small outfit in Spain, and they can't. They're not competing on price. Like, so, they're not trying to compete with the Dells of this world and the HPs of this world. If you're buying a KDE Slimbook, then you are, voting with your wallet, because the company support, Linux initiatives in Spain. They help set up a Linux center, education center, where other volunteers come in and teach courses. And all the hardware that's in there is all KDE Slimbooks, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah. Also their unique seller point is they are basically the company that sells preloaded KDE machines, right?
Mm. And, I can't fault it. It's like it was designed. This laptop was designed for this OS, and this OS was designed for this laptop. It just works brilliantly together.
Yeah, I think it's been telling that the one thing we've not spoken about through this whole review is the fact that it's called the KDE Slimbook, and we've not spoken about KDE at all. The assumption being that's just working and does its job, and we're focusing on the hardware characteristics of the laptop.
And in terms of branding, on the lid, there's a rather large Slimbook logo and a KDE.
Oh, are you still with us, Alan?
I am still here.
Excellent. So you were telling us about the KDE logo.
Yes, and I managed to tilt the laptop and suspend it while we were recording. So suspend definitely works.
I'm definitely leaving that in.
Also good to know that Mumble reconnects and our audio recorder carries on recording, I hope.
We hope.
So, yes, it's got a nice big logo on the lid to help, brand awareness, but it's a big KDE logo.
Yeah.
The K with the cog and stuff.
And is that sort of etched into the lid? Or
It is, yeah.
Wow.
It's not a sticker,
Fantastic.
it's etched in. Yeah.
That's nice.
It's good stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I think that's probably all we've got time to hear about the KDE Slimbook today. So thanks very much, Slimbook, for sending it in.
Mm.
And now it's time for some command line love. And
You right, you got a sore throat there, Mark.
and this week's command line love is snap set core refresh schedule. What does that do?
So for a while now, people have one of the main design goals of Snaps and the core is that it automatically updates itself.
Yeah.
It refreshes in the background, so you've always got the latest, freshest applications. And actually, some people want that not to be the case.
They want the crusty old applications.
Well, what they don't want is the system to be updated in the middle of the day.
Oh, while they're
trying
using
to use
it. Yes.
Right.
Got it.
So the Snappy developers added an option that allows you to set when the system refreshes. And that's what this command does. You do sudo snap set core and then refresh.schedule equals and then a time period.
Oh,
So
okay.
on mine, I've set it refresh schedule equals 4 until 7.
Yeah.
And we'll put the details of how you do this in the show notes. But that means my machine will only go and get updates between 4 in the morning and 7 in the morning.
Does that mean you've got to leave it powered on between those times, or will it wake itself up?
Yes, you have to. It has to be on at that time. So on my home server, I have it set between 4 and 7.
Yeah.
On my laptop, I have it set between 10 and 12 because I'm typically still awake but not doing anything useful between 10 and 12 at midnight. But
Sorry, I thought you meant in the morning then.
But on my work laptop, I have that one set between 8 and 9.
Yeah.
Because between 8 and 9, I have meetings and I'm looking at stuff in my browser. I'm reading mail and stuff.
Yeah.
And so underneath, all my apps are refreshing. So before I start my day, I know I've got all the latest apps before I start.
Great.
It's pretty cool.
Awesome.
We love getting your feedback. If you've got a comment about something you hear on the show, why don't you drop us an email on show@ubuntupodcast.org.
And now it's time for all of your feedback. We had a ton of discussion after last week's show. Most of that took place in our Telegram channel, which you'll find at ubuntupodcast.org/Telegram. So we had a load of comments come in about our discussion about whether Linux desktop stuff has failed because people are just making web apps these days and Chrome OS is eating our lunch. So a few of the comments we had, one of the suggestions was that lots of people are buying Chromebooks now, but that might just be another fad like tablets were maybe. And really people in their day-to-day jobs, they're given a Windows PC, which is probably about 10 years old and has just been updated for Windows XP. And that's actually what people use day-to-day. It's not Chromebooks, it's still Windows that's on top, or maybe sort of dragging along underneath at least.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, that, because it's very it's like very subjective as to what you see around you. Like if you'd have asked me what I see on a daily basis, Linux machines everywhere as far as the eye can see. But if you ask me,
is that because you're surrounded by your army of ThinkBooks, yes. ThinkPads? I'll get it right one day.
Yes,
I think
all
you
of
should
that.
keep calling them ThinkBooks, Mark. I like that.
Please don't. But then if you'd have asked me 10 years ago when I was sat in a corporate office, every single machine around me would have been Windows 7 or Windows XP or whatever. Yeah. So
that's what I see around me every day, unfortunately.
Right. And we had other comments, other questions that furthered on from that, like, have we as a Linux community failed to convince people to use the apps we distribute with the OS? Like, the fact that people are just installing a minimal version because maybe they don't like our apps and they've chosen to use other apps. Maybe we've just failed to convince people to use our apps. Perhaps that's the case.
Yeah. Or sort of the flip side of that is, the people who are developing the apps not making very good apps, and therefore they failed to convince people to use theirs rather than installing something else.
Yeah, and that's a difficult one to call.
Yeah, I mean, to
for
be
a
honest,
software developer, your application is terrible.
And it depends
that's
on
why nobody's using it.
But to be honest, I don't think that's the case, because I don't think the apps which are, I mean, we're talking really about the default selected, curated apps, really. And I don't think that any of those are rubbish. I think that they've been chosen for a reason, and generally they are of high quality and featureful and good at what they do.
I think in some cases, though, the default applications that we switch in that we ship in distributions reflect how things were a few years ago. When we think about music players, most people consume their music by streaming it either from Spotify or YouTube. There are fewer people these days that are actually loading their own offline copy of their MP3s into a music player and playing their music that way.
I don't know. That's a tricky one, because, when Dustin did his survey of what do you want out of 1804 over a year ago now, I think, one of the key things that we got out of that was, what's the most popular music player? VLC, right? And so it's very difficult for us to say things like most people do this or most people do that, because we see a lot of that. There are a lot of countries where Spotify doesn't work, and there are a lot of places where you can't reasonably stream music from YouTube because the bitrate just is, you can't sustain the playback.
Okay, so
it's difficult for us to make those generalizations, which is why I know we keep mentioning it, but that telemetry about what apps people use is so useful, because that can tell us, this is what people actually really do or not. That's why that whole conversation was so important.
I'm using Spotify as shorthand for, regional streaming services, because I realise that, depending on where you are in the world, there'll be a different provider of that music service.
Yeah, I still disagree.
Another comment that we had from someone who's been using Chrome OS was that, from their point of view, with apps moving to the web or web technologies, the actual underlying OS becomes less important, and so what they want is the OS which requires the least maintenance, essentially.
Yeah, and since I gave my mum a Chromebook, she had an Ubuntu machine for years, and I gave her it was getting a bit long in the tooth, and I gave her a Chromebook, and I basically never hear from her. Not never hear from my mum, but never hear from a
since you gave her that, she's just excommunicated you.
Like I can definitely say that when she used an Ubuntu machine, I used to get periodic technical support questions, mostly to do with either like web-based stuff, but often like the user interface. And now I have way more conversations with my mum about my son's football team than I do about tech support. And that's a real flip. And, I can see why people choose Chrome OS.
You could have inserted the name of any other operating system other than Chrome OS in there and seen that kind of improvement in lowering the tech support requirement.
Yeah, probably. I don't think it is specific to Ubuntu. I think it actually, if she'd have had Windows or a Mac, should have been equally flummoxed by some of the things that go on those platforms as well.
Yeah.
Interesting. And something which kind of occurred to me after we had the discussion, which I wish I'd mentioned, was, I suppose, one thing that we missed is that an OS isn't necessarily just the apps. There's also quite a lot, if you think about not just integration between the apps, but also integration with your hardware and how well your OS does that. So I think one of the things that Linux still does very well is built-in support for lots of different hardware and making it, it's straightforward to have my printer and connect to it and scan to it over the Wi-Fi, even though that's not what this came on the CD with the printer.
Right.
And I've got my servers with various bits of software running, which I can connect to and all sorts of bits and bobs like that. So I don't think that we should downplay the fact that the Linux kernel itself is still a vital part of the system, and that gives us a lot of power.
Yeah, and the other thing I would say is, reflecting on that episode from a couple of weeks ago, I would say that it doesn't matter that desktop Linux has a niche audience and a fairly small user base. I think we can consider everyone that's using desktop Linux as connoisseurs. In the same way that most people that buy wine off the shelves in the supermarket buy the mass-produced rubbish, and a few people buy the good stuff. And I think for those people that are using desktop Linux, they're connoisseurs of technology, and they're connoisseurs of having complete control over their system. And Linux affords them some control and luxury and capability that the other operating systems don't.
I wasn't sure if we were buying the rubbish or we were the connoisseurs for a minute there.
If it wasn't clear, we are the connoisseurs.
You're saying that desktop Linux is very much the fine wine of operating systems.
Yes, that's my position.
I think we'll leave it there.
We know you must be using the brilliant Pocket Cast because it's, brilliant. You can be brilliant too by giving each Ubuntu podcast episode a star in the Pocket Cast show notes to help more brilliant people find our brilliant show.
Well, that's all for episode 14. Thank you very much for listening. I think our next show is going to come live from Foss Talk Live.
Oh golly,
crikey,
really?
Is it that soon?
It is that soon, yes.
Dear.
A couple of weeks' time.
We should probably prepare something.
Yeah.
We should definitely prepare something for that.
Now and then.
We have a reputation to uphold.
I arrived back in England the day before Foss Talk Live.
Oh my gosh. I'll print out the laminated thing.
Yeah, please, thank you.
I can't believe I suspended my laptop in the middle of the show.